that's our current hypothesis is something happens with Bill and he decides he doesn't want to put the time into that. These were conferences basically to combat reductionism and positivism in various disciplines across the world. And the people who participated in these are even more impressive. I mean, Nobel winners, it goes on and on, the people who participated in those. Was McCoy in any of those conferences? I'm not aware that he was, yeah. And I think Phil would have pointed that out because, of course, Phil is one of McCoy's students. Okay, so there's this publication work, these conferences at Bowdoin. Intellect and Hope is in this same period, and many of the people from Bowdoin were the contributors to Intellect and Hope. Bill's involvement in Intellect and Hope, it is clear. I mean, it was Langford and Poteat edited it, but I think Bill did a lot of the editing. At least this is what he tells Provost Cole and President Knight as he's describing his, in some cases, weekly correspondence with the people writing those essays. Since a number of you did not read these, I think I should just read a couple of sections to give you a sense of how enthusiastic Bill at this point was about what I'm calling Polanyi's grand project. And this is sort of setting it up for the turn that we're going to see here quickly. I didn't turn my watch on. How am I doing here?
Let's see, I've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay. To offset the lack of consultation, I've been in continuous correspondence with our authors, supplying them in some cases weekly with unpublished current works of Polanyi, sometimes specifying in exhaustive detail precisely what we wanted, in many cases passing on finished essays by other authors. So this is Bill kind of reporting to Provost Cole about what he was doing. If I may be forgiven for saying so, it is the most comprehensive and integral assault upon behaviorism and reductionism of which I know, save only that of Polanyi's work itself. And it has the additional advantage of coming from prestigious hands in many different fields, authors from the fields of religion, philosophy, political science, biology, physics, Northern Ireland, England, Belgium, and so forth. That's Bill describing Intellect and Hope. He says to President Knight, I think the enclosed carbon is self-explanatory. I'm suffering from delusions of grandeur. Even so, it has become true that the largely reductionistic ethos of modernity is losing its grip, thank God, with Sig Koch having struck at some painful blows while on our faculty, and Polanyi, he's another guy who's involved in all this, probably the source of the money, because he went to Rockefeller from Duke. And Polanyi, in '64, having on paper at least, administered the coup de grace. So the result is Intellect and Hope. For good or ill, the name of Polanyi and his work is coming to be associated with that of Duke all over the world, rather as that of Husserl with Louvain. That's Bill writing President Knight. So what I'm saying, and I'm going to make a sort of more bold statement than I ultimately probably wanted. Yeah, okay. 68, well, in this period, Poteat is right in there pitching with Polanyi, all right? But in 68, there's a radical change. There's the classic letter, which we have in here, when he pulls out of being the co-editor of Polanyi's collected papers, where he writes Marjorie Green and says, I made a mistake when I told Michael in Washington I could do this. I can't do it. And it's partly because of us, his students. And I can tell you, having read, and since writing this, the correspondence between Green and Polanyi about that book, that if Bill had been involved in that, there'd be a lot of dissertations that never would have been finished, because there was an awful lot of work involved and a lot of hassling. And Marjorie, is amazing, the way she tells him, you shouldn't put this in there. You're wrong about this and that. You need to change this and that. But that's Polanyi and Marjorie Green. So he pulls out of that. He doesn't do the study groups. And we don't know that he was invited, but we think he probably would have been. He goes to Greece. And that fall in '68, he has the Orphic dismemberment when he walks around the corner in the evening light and sees the sculpture. I think from particularly from '64 to '67, Poteat was Polanyi's ally, promoter, agent, designated literary executor, probably. Highly enthusiastic about the big project. But what he realizes is that both he and Polanyi have been trying to deal with the Enlightenment on terms that the Enlightenment had set, and he's got to go deeper, and that's what he begins to do. Now, he doesn't drop Polanyi. The deep personal friendship remains. He goes to Texas really as a kind of a caregiver at that point, comes back saying, I had to serve as Polanyi's memory. It's beginning to show by this point that Polanyi, and Polanyi is aware of it when you read the letters. Oh, it's so sad to read that Polanyi's losing some of his cognitive edge. But Bill doesn't participate. He doesn't take on meaning, though he was asked to. That's the last book by Polanyi. He does read the outline. There's talk about Polanyi coming to Duke. There's talk about maybe Bill going over there to help. There's a whole string of people that Polanyi tried to get to help him write meaning, and eventually got Prosh. But Bill
Bill agreed to at one point and then he had to back off, or
chose to back off.
Did he respond to the outline?
We don't know. We don't know. Yeah. And there, I mean, the information may be out there somewhere, but we don't know at this point. So Bill continues to explore other alternatives to finding a post-critical position that's sufficiently radical. He continues his heavy teaching and advising schedule. He becomes department chair, and then the post-critical path back to recovering the ground becomes even clearer to him spring of '76 when he writes the note for the graduate seminar, which some of you were probably in, which turns into a longer note and then turns into Polanyian Meditations. So I think 1968 was a key year in this reorientation away from Polanyi's grand program as Polanyi was pursuing it, and the new direction that still draws from, but now goes for a phenomenological fleshing out of the underlying logic of Polanyi and more critical of many of Polanyi's explicit arguments. It's his Orphic dismemberment. And by the way, there is more in the letters about what the Orphic dismemberment was about, letters that he wrote to Dale and Ben and others during that period, and sort of bibliographical citations. So that's something we want to learn more about. Well, I've gone too long, but as I say, I didn't know how intimately he had been aligned with Polanyi earlier, and all of this leads me to wonder if those of you who studied with Bill earlier got the same Polanyi that we got in '68 to '7, and those after '76 got the same Polanyi, and more importantly, did we get the same Poteat? Well, by '71, as we know, he saw how Polanyi's mental powers were slipping when he was in Texas. And then when you read the biography, you get some sense of the struggle of those last years, but when you read the letters, it's even sadder. Polanyi continues to hope that Bill and others could help him, but it got more and more difficult. Marjorie tells Michael point blank that parts of meaning are a, quote, betrayal of personal knowledge. She says, you're losing it It was true, and I swear I do not think she. I wonder whether she realized that. Richard Gelwick's reports of Polanyi's confusion are poignant reminders of what is in some of our futures. But Magda still trusted Bill over others who were trying to help, or who were trying to help themselves to the papers at their institution. But it really is sad, but here we are 40 years later still carrying on, so all is not lost.